Hey everyone, welcome to HEADCHECK Health Talks. We're excited to have our guest today, Tristan Sandhu. Just to get us to jump right into it, Tristan, tell us a bit about your background, what you're up to now, and the conference that's coming up.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks for having me, Eric. And just to give you a bit of background on myself, I'm an athletic therapist. I did my undergraduate and master's degree at McMaster University. From there, I moved over to Mount Royal University and did my advanced certificate in athletic therapy. And I've also done my doctoral degree in athletic training from Ohio University. And so my background as an athletic therapist, I spent the vast majority of my career so far working in professional sports. Right after I finished at Mount Royal, I kind of knew I wanted to go into professional sports and see what that atmosphere and environment was like. So I sent my resume to pretty much every CFL team, 8 teams at the time. And I was fortunate that the BC Lions in Vancouver had a job opening for me. And I essentially spent 12 years working full-time in professional football, progressing from a student to an assistant to a head athletic therapist. So I kind of got the full gamut of roles and responsibilities that are involved in the professional sphere as an athletic therapist. From there, I started teaching sessionally, which is essentially part-time during our football off seasons. And that kind of got piqued my interest in teaching and going into the academic work full-time. And I had an opportunity in the fall of 2024 to kind of transition away from professional sports and into full-time academia as a teaching instructor. I'm now full-time at Douglas College, where we have a 4-year undergraduate degree in sports science. And then I also teach part-time at the University of British Columbia. And from there, that's kind of opened up my time and opportunity to do a few more things. When in professional sports, we can get into you work essentially 7 days a week, and teaching it's different. You're not working on weekends and you have more time off. So that's kind of allowed me to pursue other opportunities and things that I'm interested in from an athletic therapy standpoint, which is why this kind of conference exists now. So I kind of I had the idea kind of piqued to me from another conference that I had attended. It was a sports medicine conference primarily aimed at physicians, and we was all done virtually. We had 7 speakers. They were kind of quick hitting topics on relevant issues for sports med physicians. And as I was, I spoke at that conference, but I also obviously viewed it and attended it as well. And I kind of essentially thought, I can do this. I can run a similar type sports medicine conference that will be of interest to healthcare providers, whether AT, PT, strength and conditioning coaches, sports scientists, et cetera. And one of my goals was always to put it at a price point that was affordable, that it's, in my opinion, one of the best value CEU opportunities out there, because you get to learn from a wide variety of speakers, but also it's at a price point that's pretty conducive to attending. It allows a wide audience to attend and participate in the conferences that we had. So we put on our first one in June. It was kind of a generic, wide variety topic sports medicine conference. And then our conference coming up in December is specifically focusing on head injuries. So it's more topic specific, and we'll have 7 speakers who will speak for about 25 minutes each. There'll be a Q&A period following, and it's essentially about a 3.5 to 4 hour conference on Sunday, December 14th.
Awesome. I'm sure we'll maybe post a link to that in the description or something like that, but that's great. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit, Tristan, about what the day-to-day is like for an AT at the professional level. I mean, you've had experience in the CFL and some other roles. You mentioned it's a 7-day-a-week job. I mean, tell us a little bit what that's like.
Yeah, professional sports is interesting. I for sure loved my time working day in and day out in professional sports, but it's very time consuming. It's very all intensive when the season is going on. From essentially May 1st to essentially mid to the end of November, you're working pretty much every day, which means you're coming in after the plane lands at 2 a.m. You're usually in the treatment facility at between 9, 10, or 11 a.m. to help those injured athletes get better. So the nice part is you get to see them every day, and there's consistency, and you can really track them and get a sense of how the rehab is progressing from week to week and to see if they'll be available. but it's definitely one of those roles where you're there every day. You're involved with the practices, the taping, the treatments, the emergency responder care that goes along with a high contact sport like football. You're there at, games, you're there on the road. Like I said, it's a super fun atmosphere. You get to really know the athletes and know who they are as people, and get to make good relationships that last a lifetime. And it's one of the highlights now that I've done it for a little while is seeing the athletes as they come back, whether that's having their jersey retired or honored. And that's a pretty kind of cool feeling to know you played a small role in helping them, and to see how they have progressed and how their life has been impacted by football and how it's taken them to some pretty cool places in their work after as well.
Right. So football is obviously, everyone knows it's fast paced and it's an intense sport. There's a lot of G forces happening when these players are hitting each other. How does that impact the way that you approach injury prevention and treatment, as opposed to maybe being an athletic trainer for something different, like swimming or running or something like that?
Yeah, I think as athletic therapists in general, one of our goals is always to be preventative, right? If we can prevent an injury from occurring, that's definitely what our goal is. I think there's a couple of different ways that we can implement prevention exercises into our programs, whether that's through the exercises they are doing in their dynamic warm-up, right? There's little exercises that we can implement, whether that's proprioceptive work or mobility or strengthening work of commonly weak or immobile structures. And then there's also things you can do throughout your strength conditioning programming that are important to implement from an injury prevention standpoint. There's also kind of some cool technology you can use for baseline testing, whether that's assessing muscular strength or proprioceptive or a force distribution or landing technique, that are kind of cool and kind of cutting edge that you can do from a preventative standpoint as baseline measures that I think are really valuable and important, that can hopefully make your job a little bit easier as an athletic therapist. But with that being said, it is football. Things are going to happen. So athletes are still going to get hurt regardless of what we do. And we still have to have reactive strategies to help an athlete get better quicker, essentially.
Right. So whether this is on the preventative side or on the reactive side, on the treatment side, and returning athletes to play, how do you successfully communicate with coaching staff? You mentioned you were with the athletes all the time and you're in it 7 days a week. So I'm trying to understand a sense of, if there are communication breakdowns between medical staff and coaching staff, where do those happen? Like, how do you make sure that the communication stays strong there?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I think from my personal experience, communication with coaches and general managers happens on a daily, if not very frequent basis. It's not uncommon for the head coach for myself, the head athletic therapist, and the head coach and the general manager to have a daily meeting about the statuses of each athlete and player and their availability, and maybe the results of people seeing the physician or medical imaging that's going on that day, or how an athlete performed in practice and if they were hesitant to do certain movements, et cetera. So it's very much a daily conversation and a very frequent conversation. There's often frequent conversations, whether it's in practice about maybe what an athlete should or shouldn't be doing. And then obviously at the end of the day to kind of recap how things went and what the plan for tomorrow is supposed to be. But it's one of those frequent conversations that needs to happen so that everyone is aware of what an athlete should versus shouldn't be doing, and that there's no communication breakdowns between yourself and the head coach and the general manager.
Okay, interesting. So from a concussion perspective then, HEADCHECK, if you're watching this and you don't understand what it is that HEADCHECK does, just as a quick explainer, we try to bridge that gap between what a concussion policy or concussion protocol is and how it's actually executed on the field. In your experience, Tristan, what's the biggest gap between the concussion policy or protocol and then what actually happens on the field?
Yeah, I think sometimes it's maybe a lack of awareness or exposure to a concussion protocol and how it should be implemented. From my experience, working at the professional level, and I've worked with coaches from, a variety of different ages and demographics. And generally my understanding is that coaches have a pretty good understanding of how the concussion policy is implemented. At the CFL level, they do get some education on the policy and the program. And I've always had good experiences working with athletes and coaches with respect to the protocol and not having to rush guys back, and understanding that, yeah, this is very much a medical issue, and then that the medical staff is going to take care of it. And that when the athlete is ready to return, essentially let me know, and we can implement and plan accordingly with what they should be doing at that given stage. So I've always had pretty positive experiences, but I think there is some potential breakdowns that do happen with maybe a lack of an established protocol. So I often think, people and teams and leagues that might have the same resources that we have, whether that's at maybe the youth level or maybe within a school program, that there probably are potential breakdowns in that, what should be established as a concussion protocol. I think maybe sometimes at the youth level or the amateur level, parents or coaches or schools might not be fully educated on what the athletes should be doing at a given stage, how much time off they might need, how their symptoms might be impacted by practicing again or rushing back too early or even going to school again, right? So I think there's definitely, education component that's really important to ensure that there's better consistency and better follow through at essentially the youth and amateur levels of concussion practices.
Awesome. Okay, thanks for that insight. Yeah. So we'll shift gears away from concussion here. Just curious, for any sports executives that are listening here, what would you say is the biggest things that sports executives don't understand about the things that athletic therapists or athletic trainers struggle with on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, I think, this is an interesting one, because I would probably say just the workload and responsibilities, but everyone in pro sports is busy, right? So
Yeah.
It's hard to fully justify that one, but
well, you just mentioned that the sports executives are highly aware of the statuses of the players on a regular everyday basis. But I guess maybe another way of putting this is, are they aware of the status of you or their ATs on an everyday basis?
I think so. Yeah. I've generally worked with some pretty good executives and coaches and management staff that, are aware of what our roles and responsibilities are. And, I think, they're have a pretty good understanding of the breadth of things that we offer, whether it's, not just taping and holding water as people commonly see, but, it's doing the treatments of our athletes, communicating with our team physicians and communicating with our integrated support team of, chiropractors and massage therapists and physiotherapists. It's, doing the emergency responder care of a serious injury when those do occur in games or practices. So I think for the most part, executives and have a pretty good understanding of our roles and responsibilities. What I will say is that something that's important is that I think, it's important that they understand that this is obviously a pretty all-encompassing role and responsibility, and that there's oftentimes considerations that should be made, whether that's, additional time off or, whether scheduling issues, to help ensure that people aren't getting burnt out and fatigued from, the grind of what a season looks like.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'm sure the executives might say that they're feeling burnt out as well. Like you said, it's not just the ATs that are out there every day doing it, but it's all the executives and the staff as well. They're all working really hard, and the players too. So interesting. So there's a question we had in here, interesting one. If you wanted to get budget for a new tool, how would you go about doing that? Or how would you suggest that other ATs go about doing that? If you thought this new tool was going to be really helpful and it was going to increase player safety, or it was going to help the players or decrease risk, or whatever it was that was going to do, how do you pitch that to management to get approval for the budget?
Yeah, I think I'll answer this answer a couple different ways. And I think it's important to, this might be hard for a young AT or someone who's new in an organization to start doing, but I think with time, make yourself involved in those conversations. Let your general manager or your supervisor know that you would like to have a say in how the budget is allocated, that you have some suggestions. I think framing things from an athlete safety perspective or improve athlete performance, or maybe making an organization more efficient, are good ways to help get, whether it's technology or more people power as in work staff, are good ways to help frame different budget recommendations that use through the lens of improving performance, helping athletes, get on the field quicker, faster, and making your operation from a medical side run more efficiently can be a good way to frame different budget additions to your coaches, your staff, or the people that are responsible for supervising with you. Especially in the sport with football, with the injuries that we have and the importance of monitoring and safe care of head injuries. The staff that I've worked with have always been pretty receptive when we frame things from an athlete safety perspective, whether that's having an additional ambulance at our home games or having an additional athletic therapist join our staff for whether it's a portion of time or for the season. We're pretty impactful and can be shown to have improved performance as well as better overall care for our athletes.
Awesome. On the technology side, I guess, if you could snap your fingers and just create a product, and maybe you can with AI, I don't know, to create a product that doesn't exist yet, what would you want that product to do?
Yeah, it's one of those things where, maybe you want to get an exact concussion diagnosis right on the spot. We obviously have tests and things we use to determine if an athlete has suffered a head injury, but having a test with 100% sensitivity and specificity would be nice and important, and obviously make our jobs easier compared to a bit of the gray area that might exist between a diagnosis with a concussion or not. Especially when you're at maybe the youth levels and it's just you working at a football game or a hockey game or other kind of high contact sport. I think if you had some sort of field of play test that could determine with 100% specificity and sensitivity that an athlete is concussed, that would be a nice feature for us to have.
Do you think we'll ever get there? Do you think there will be a test at some point that can tell us for sure, like a biomarker or something like that, whether or not there's a concussion?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't know. I can't comment on that 100% well, but I think I wouldn't rule it out. That's for sure. And never say never, right? So maybe one day we'll have that, and I think that will make people's jobs a lot easier and have more or more confidence when they are, assessing and maybe diagnosing or recommending the diagnosis of a concussion following a head impact.
Okay, so in absence of that, because that doesn't exist, and it might in the future, but I guess even if you had that, you would still need to make sure the policy was getting followed. But just from HEADCHECK perspective, you used HEADCHECK all throughout your time in the CFL. Did HEADCHECK make your job easier, and how, if so?
Yeah, I think it really did for the most part. It really kind of streamlined the operation of how we do our baseline testing, and as well as how we do our return to play testing. Made it a lot easier to have technology involved rather than, when I first started, we were doing paper-based scat tests, right? So you have a bunch of file folders, you have the results, and you track those and you keep those with you. But now with HEADCHECK, everything's right on our phone. It reduces the storage space. It makes it obviously more secure and easier for us to access, the baseline tests, as well as, even send the athlete the symptom scale if they're maybe not coming in for that day or they're on a bye week and they're at home. So it just kind of makes that follow-up process and the baseline testing definitely easier and more succinct. And I will also say this too, that HEADCHECK's always been pretty good at getting back to us when we have issues or technology issues, whether that's not being able to log in or needing to update. That they're pretty good at getting back to us in terms of the troubleshooting those common issues that we might see with technology as well.
Cool. So last couple of questions here, just around athletic therapy as a profession, athletic training as a profession. First one would be, what insight can you give to ATs that are looking to advance into a higher level of sport? Maybe they're working with a semi-pro team and they want to go to pro, or they're working with a junior hockey team and they want to go to semi-pro. Or how do you advance to that next level?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I think, especially if you're young or you're in school, I think just seek as many opportunities as you can. There's lots of maybe opportunities that might come your way. Some of them might not be paid, some of them might be. And I think it's important to pursue as many of those different opportunities as you can to get a wide variety of experience in different sports. meet different mentors and see how different people treat and assess injuries can be really important to give you a valuable skill set. And then from there, I would reach out to the people that have careers that you're interested in, whether that's working in professional sports or other settings. Reach out to those people, ask them maybe how they got there, if they have any suggestions, maybe they have any opportunity for you to shadow them or to do a placement with them. I think that can be a really good way to obviously get your foot in the door and to begin to navigate maybe getting into the professional landscape. I will say this too, in my opinion, there are obviously opportunities for young athletic therapists to get involved in pro sport. Working in the CFL, each training camp period in May, it's not uncommon for teams to have 3 to 4 student athletic therapists helping us for our training camp.
Right.
It's not uncommon for us to hire, seasonal athletic therapists to be involved in the football season. And those are great kind of entry-level opportunities to get involved in a pretty high caliber professional sports. From other lens of maybe looking at hockey and other levels, again, reaching out to people that have the positions that you're interested in, seeing if they want to have a quick conversation or a phone call, I think can go a long way. And then seeing if they have opportunities, whether that's at their training camps or maybe their developmental camps that they offer, are good ways to maybe get involved and show that and express they're interested in that potential workplace in the future.
Yeah, I've always been surprised for me at how, it's scary, I think, for a young professional to reach out to somebody that's where you want to be. But I've always been pleasantly surprised at how responsive those types of people are in wanting to help and mentor and stuff like that. So it's really good advice.
Yeah, definitely. And so, I alluded to that when I wanted to work in the CFL, I sent my resume to all 8 teams. And essentially what I did was I called them. Like I picked up my phone.
Yeah.
I called a generic line for the team and I said, can you redirect me to this person? And they always did. And I was able to actually speak, with that head athletic therapist of the team, have a quick conversation, follow up by sending my resume, see if they had any openings. So, and that, opened the door for me to have a pretty good and long career working in professional football. So yeah, I've always had good opportunities, whether it's reaching out to a team to shadow for a quick bit. I've shadowed a couple teams in the NFL. I've shadowed and met ATs from other NBA and MLB and NHL teams that have always been welcoming and receptive to have a quick conversation and just to compare notes and see how both of us can get better at the operation and the care that we provide our athletes.
Awesome. So last question here is where would you like to see athletic therapy as a profession, or athletic training, athletic therapy as a profession in the next 3 to 5 years? How would you like to see it evolve?
Yeah, I think just continued promotion of the athletic therapy profession. From my background and experience, I think it's, what I would classify as a young profession. We have a lot of graduates every year, and sometimes there aren't enough roles or opportunities for these professionals to move into. So if we can create more jobs and opportunities, whether that's at different colleges or universities, whether that's in more private practice clinics, whether that's with youth teams or in high schools or in kind of private schools and academies, I think creating more job opportunities for athletic therapists so that people can have a long career, so that you don't feel, if you don't get a job in 2 to 3 years, that you might move on to a different profession beyond athletic therapy. So I think creating more jobs and opportunities is very important for the athletic therapy profession.
Awesome. Well, Tristan, is there anything else that you wanted to get across to the listeners today? And then maybe just recap the details of the conference coming up before we head off.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me. And like Eric mentioned, we're hosting an athletic therapy or kind of concussion-based conference Sunday, December 14th. It's all done virtually. The best way to find more information about the conference is through our Instagram handle. So it's at athletic_therapy_job network. And from there, you can find information on how to register for the conference, find opportunities and jobs, and create some conversation around the profession of athletic therapy as a whole. And the conference, it's not just for athletic therapists. It's geared to have a wide variety of healthcare professionals, whether it's athletic therapy, physiotherapy, physicians, chiropractors, et cetera. I encourage you all to consider it and to check it out. We've got a pretty wide variety of speakers that are very well experienced in the field of concussions, speakers who are physicians, speakers who are academic researchers, athletic therapists doing research in the field of concussion, as well as physiotherapists working in the field of concussion and head injury management. So I would encourage you, if you're interested in the field of head injuries, to definitely check it out, as it could be a pretty cool continuing education opportunity.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time, Tristan, and we'll hope to have you back on the podcast again soon.
Awesome.
Thanks for watching,
Eric.
everyone. Bye.